2025, I predict, is going to be a much better year for the comic book market than 2024. First of all, because interest rates have been going down. You see, as interest rates go up, then spending and investing go way down because people have a greater desire to hold on to their cash because they know they can get a decent rate of return at absolutely no risk in a high yield savings account. And this is exactly what happened in 2024 as interest rates climbed over 5% in some cases in savings accounts. Then people decided, hey, I'm not going to spend my money right now. Instead, I'm going to hold on to some cash and let it grow in the savings account. And I know this is exactly what happened to me. Last year, I bought much fewer comic books than I had bought in years because I had a hard time justifying spending money on a comic book unless I found an incredible deal, because I knew last year, the comic book market at best was kind of treading water and breaking even. I said, man, I can't really spend $100, $200 on a comic book when I could have it sitting in a savings account making money and knowing that, hey, this year or maybe next year, that comic book I can still buy at the same price but have that interest then to use on other things. But when the interest rates start to go down, as they've been doing over the past several months, then people start becoming more willing to let go of their cash. In other words, when you can make 5% on your cash, you think, well, yeah, I probably should hold on to this. But then when it drops to 4%, you start thinking, oh, man, I really want that Spider-Man book, and 4% isn't that much. But when it gets down to 3%, which I think it's likely to get to this year, then you start even thinking more. Oh, man, that Spider-Man book looks so good, and I really probably should keep this money in the bank. But 3% really isn't that much. And I'm going to be so happy adding this Spider-Man book to my collection that people start thinking, well, I'll let go of a little bit of my cash. And of course, it's not going to all go to comics. People are going to put money in other collectibles and other hobbies, in the stock market. But some of that money that I think is going to be released as interest rates go down will certainly, in my opinion, go to comic books. And of course, the more people are spending on comic books, that means more comic books are coming off the market. The supply is decreasing. As people are willing to spend, their demand for those comics are increasing. And a decreasing supply and increasing demand, of course, leads to the comic book market then going up in value. Now, a second reason why I believe the comic book market is going to do better in 2025 is because compared to this time last year, there's been a growing sense of optimism. Of course, entering into last year, we all knew that a presidential election was on the horizon. And whenever you have one of those elections coming up, basically the whole country is filled with fear and anxiety, wondering, oh shoot, who's going to be elected? Are we going to be doomed or are we going to boom? We don't know. And everybody is just sitting on pins and needles. Well, now, of course, we're on the other side of that election. And half the country obviously are pleased with the results. And certainly those people have grown in optimism. But even for those who aren't pleased with the results, a number of them are at least more optimistic, I think, because they at least know what to expect. In other words, sometimes the unknown is actually more scary than what the reality. And even though there's certainly a number of people who are still fearful, still anxious over the election results back in November, there are a number of people on the Democrat side who at least are able to say, I think, well, I don't really like what happened, but at least we know what to expect and we can start moving forward, trying to build towards the next election. And I believe they are actually less pessimistic than they were a year ago. Regardless of whether or not that is true, obviously at least half of the country are more optimistic than they were at this time last year. And when optimism goes up, then spending and investing also goes way up. In other words, when people are feeling pessimistic and they're concerned about the future, then they're like, man, I can't spend any money. I don't know if I'm going to have a job next year. I don't know if inflation is going to keep going. And so they begin to hold on to that money and stop buying things like comic books. But when all of a sudden people start feeling optimistic, they're like, hey, the good times are coming. I don't need to worry about my money because everything is going to be fine. Trump's going to take care of everything. Again, I'm not saying that's true, and I'm skeptical of any politician being able to make everything good. But that's how they're feeling, right? They're like, oh, yeah, everything's going to be great. I can buy comic books. I can buy other things. I can invest in the stock market. It's going to be wonderful. Good times are on the horizon. Plus, they just feel like celebrating. Hey, we feel happy. We're like, hey, let's party. Of course, this is New Year's week. There are a lot of people partying on New Year's Eve. A lot of money spent on lots of things. And people are just excited. And as optimism grows, then people just want to celebrate. And in fact, I think part of the reason optimism has been growing is because some people have just been suffering from pessimism fatigue. In other words, obviously the last few years have had a number of rough situations, whether it's COVID or whether it's inflation. And at some point, people just get tired of being tired. And so, whether it's rational or not, they just kind of make a decision. Well, I got to get out of this funk and I'm going to be more hopeful. It can't get worse, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really funny. Again, reality doesn't always matter as much as people's perceptions. So in some sense, it doesn't even really matter, what the next year is going to be like. If people believe it's going to be good, then they're going to act it. People act out what they believe more than they act out what is actually real. Does that make sense? Tell me in the comments if you follow what I'm saying. But again, as optimism has grown, I believe people are going to spend more money. And going to the same thing, as people spend more money, then supply of comics gets low, demand of comics get high, and then we see the comic book market go up. Now, the big question, of course, is it going to cause a comic book boom once again? Now, I predict there's not going to be a boom, but I think we're going to turn a corner. 2025 is going to be a better year for the market than it has been since the boom. But you tell me what you think. Are you feeling optimistic like me about this year? And so you're ready to spend all your money on comic books just like I am? Or are you still feeling burnt and you're Debbie Downer? And you're going to hold on to your cash, but you're going to laugh at me when my collection goes to zero because I'm an idiot. What do you think? Like, subscribe. Thank you.